G'day everyone, I'm Brett Dunstone and welcome to Mining Green. In today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Graham Stanaway from the Electric Mine Consortium. But first, I thought I'd just give you a quick rundown of what the Electric Mine Consortium is all about. They were set up back in 2020, so only a couple of years ago, as a collaboration between a number of different mining companies, OEMs, tech providers, basically to help facilitate the transition to electric mine. The mining companies include the likes of Goldfields, South 32, Oz Minerals, Evolution, Newcrest, Blackstone Minerals, along with OEMs such as Sandvik, Epiroc, Zero Automotive, and some other tech suppliers such as Energy Vault. Electric Mine Consortium is made up of 6 different working groups. These being energy storage, mine design, heavy underground equipment, light and auxiliary equipment for underground, and electric infrastructure, and the newest one being surface and long haulage. Electric Mine Consortium has put out a couple of interesting reports recently on the electrification of the mining industry, focusing on their members. This latest one was put out only in the last month or so. But without any further ado, I'll get on with the show. Hi and welcome everyone. I'm Brett Dunstan from Mining Green, and today I'm speaking to Graham Stanaway. Graham wears a few different hats in different roles around the place, but one of them is founder and chairman of State of Play. State of Play is the world's most comprehensive and insightful source of knowledge and strategic innovation in the mining industry, or at least that's according to their website. In 2020, State of Play, along with a number of other founding members, formed the Electric Mine Consortium, following on from the first sort of State of Play electrification report release. And the Electric Mine Consortium is the focus of our chat with Graham today. So welcome, Graham, and thanks for joining me for a bit of a chat.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
So first up, give us a bit of background, if you can, on why the Electric Mine Consortium was formed, and how I know it came out of some of the sort of earlier studies, the electrification report, but how it came back, and is it working as it was originally intended? How's it going?
Yeah, look, thanks, Brett. The state of the Electric Mine Consortium grew out of that drill down report that State of Play did. That was a very open and collaborative piece. When we came to the end of that, it was pretty clear that electrification was hit the sort of magic trifecta of health. It's the only real pathway for zero carbon and cost. People could see the productivity benefits eventually with that. So the companies got together and said, well, what can we do about that? The mining companies that had a really big intent of zero carbon, particularly the mid tiers, for various reasons, precious and base metals, got together and said, well, it's a good idea to set up a consortium to accelerate this. And the reason they, particularly the mid tiers, got together was same as any sort of collaborative effort. You share risk, rapidly improve capability, improve the pace, and so on. So that's why they did that, and they got together, and that's expanded since. So yeah, the reason was really just to so that they could accelerate the journey to zero carbon through full electrification.
Okay, and so I know you've got 6 different sort of work packages or projects, different streams that you talk about: your energy storage, your light EVs, heavy EVs, and you've got different sort of champions for each of those different streams. How are those how are those sort of progressing? Are they getting good results out of those different projects streams from the those guys?
Yeah, look, they're all different and all at different stages of technology development. Some are earlier, some are later. The ones that are later are like light vehicles, and so let's pick the light vehicle and auxiliary vehicles. There's a lot of trials going on and a lot of sharing of data. So that's been really beneficial, both in understanding how charging works and the challenges and making cultural shift. The underground equipment, for example, is a little more earlier in development, but there's some big trials going on there, both at Sandvik and Epiroc and others that are getting observed and shared between the groups. Yeah, and so they're at the various stages. And I think the one thing, I mean, it's not just the successes they have in or sharing the information, but if they find that there's roadblocks, that's useful as well too, because the whole group can kick into action and think about, well, what else do we need to try, or what other technologies are there, or even reappraising their own plans.
So it's sharing those learnings across the whole consortium and
Yeah,
trying to build that knowledge and across different scenarios. So, um, are there across those different groups, are there sort of schedules of how what they're hoping to achieve at different timelines, or it's sort of quite open ended, and they know where they want to get to, but they're not really sure quite how quickly that's going to happen.
yeah. Look, each each of those work streams. So there's 6 technical work streams and 6 enabling ones, but each of the technical work streams in particular have they have an endpoint vision. They have and have a program of work um, and trials. And they're working to that plan. So, and mostly the plans are based on sort of fairly high level view on the key levers and what they need to trial around that, and then they get going with that. Now, if that's not working, we as a facilitation team work with them to sort of replan like you do in any other business. Um, but yeah, no, they all have a plan, a vision of where the key leverage points are, a plan, and a series of trials and things that they're going to do to accelerate that goal. But it's all based on the premise that those 6 work streams, if they're all effective, then zero carbon electric mines will happen, and it's probably a few that are a bit harder than others in terms of progress.
Yeah, definitely. So it continues to evolve as more learnings and different technologies and whatever, and
Yeah,
hopefully
exactly.
trials as the trials sort of happen on sites.
Yeah, so I'll give an example of that. So with some of them, let's take the big energy storage trials. There's one that's slated for locked in for Energy Vault. But you start to get more and more information about the costs of the different technologies as you're going along. So as new information comes in, they'll look at doing more or less on the expressions of interest and going out to market. They do quite a bit of that together. The teams, they'll do joint approaches to market, which gives it a lot more leverage. It's one of the other benefits. Gives it a lot more leverage in terms of compared with a separate company or a single company going out to do that.
Right. And like stepping back, I sort of jumped over the like I think you probably covered in that question there, but like how the Electric Mine Consortium operates, like the funding arrangement, that sort of the different members, the sort of bought into the group, into the consortium, so to speak. I take it, and then I suppose it's how once you've got these members, how was decided the these different streams, the 6 sort of work packages, technical, and then the those different streams. How do they decide what needed to be? How's that decided on what was to be pursued?
Yeah, okay. So the ultimate goal was set up right at the start. So that's I won't say fixed, but that was it's on the table. So that's to
Yeah,
go to a fully electric mine, zero carbon. Creates a better working environment, both health and attractiveness. So that's sort of the guiding light. And then through that, the remit is to do that to accelerate that through resolving technology choices, shaping suppliers, um, both in communicating needs and influencing product development, influencing government policy and communication. So they're the 4 levers we're using. the funding is it's 100% through the members and partners, which covers the cost of the the management and the facilitation of
Yeah.
that. So there's no government money involved in this at all.
Do you think would government funding? Do you think that would you know give it a bit of a boost, or is there's still like there's only so far it can progress things?
Well, I think where that's often, I mean, it could, but I think uh, it's good that there hasn't been, because it's sort of forced everyone to sort of sit through this, not get lazy sometimes, which
Yeah.
can happen in that respect. Um, uh, but where the government funding, I think, is mostly useful is either in seeding these things right at the start, which is what happened with the original report via METS, which were very generous about that and getting the original research piece so very early on, with the state of play.
Yeah.
So any of these drill downs, the government seeding those is really good, or government agencies, because that they're not likely to be, that wouldn't have been seeded another way. And then the other thing is when they come to trials, you know, ARENA and CFC and those sorts of organisations are really important, because if they direct their funding effectively, that can really accelerate these capital trials. But there's a balance there. It's tricky for those organisations because they shouldn't usurp or shouldn't usurp what the product suppliers are doing. But there's certain things that if we can do at scale, would get there quicker, that's useful. So I'd say early seeding, like they did the state of play, and then the capital trials are where things sort of stall a bit at this point. TRL 6 to sort of 8 or 9. So just completing that question, then so that's how it's funded, and that covers facilitation. It's a technology pull consortium, not a push, and there's different types, but this one is the mining members define the challenges and create the pull or the need. I mean, you have consortium where different technology groups will get together, like in the semiconductor industry, this happen. It'll happen in robotics, and they'll sort of work together to formulate an offering, or transform an industry. That happens well, but this is a pool-based one. And the challenge are just defined by the members in workshops. So we did that early on. They really haven't changed much. We've had added open pit equipment with the introduction of a couple of new members. And a need for that, but I've gone 5 to 6 and added quite a few more enabling streams. They're the ones that have changed the most.
But yeah, it's really that's the streams you've got there are pretty well. They're the core of what
Yeah,
the challenge that need to be addressed going forward.
yeah,
So yeah, I am curious how like the working between different the different members and the mining companies, like the fostering. How do you go about fostering that innovative and sort of collaborative thinking between the different groups, whether maybe in the past they were sort of siloed and not necessarily you know wanting to share information, like and it's I know you're probably mainly working with mid tiers where it's probably a bit easier than the bigger fellas, but how do you go about trying to foster that sort of collaborative effort, and are the companies sort of quite open to that?
yeah. I think from a collaboration perspective, it's been key that the way that we've set up that the facilitation team's been really important. So they're a team that's really experienced. Likes of Paul Marnie, who's been strategist for 10 years. Simon Preble, Michelle Keegan. They're all sort of very senior executives that have really good strategic and relationship skills and know the industry, or know strategy. And Matty Ratcliffe is managing all of this. But basically, we put a lot of effort into design conversations. So I find that people collaborate effectively if you'll get them into a more of a strategic design conversation about thinking creatively about how to solve an issue. And that tends to pull people into that. So the way that we've designed the actual facilitation and the processes actually help a lot with the collaboration. I find also, there's often a belief that industries will either become more or less collaborative. I think people don't change, companies don't change. I mean, it's a competitive environment, and that's always been the case. I think where they will collaborate is when there's a common imperative and there's not too much competition, and you can foster that. That's a pretty rich area. So selecting the areas and avoiding the ones where you know that they'll just create, not trying to sort of force collaboration areas where you know that won't be possible or it's unrealistic. I think it's key. But I think also the people that are involved, they're they're naturally predisposed to this. Most of the people involved, the operational technical people at a fairly senior level, um, so they're actually used to sort of collaborating quite a lot. So I think culturally they're quite well attuned to it across the companies, particularly in the mid tiers. Yeah,
it's good to see the sort of open sharing and not necessarily they're all trying to head in the same direction. So it's good that they're not trying to do it all themselves and staying open and not necessarily thinking about being a we win you lose sort of thing. The main drive, like the main reasons of members jumping on board with the Electric Mine Consortium. I know it's about mine electrification, but are they what are the key reasons behind that? Is it sort of are they the corporate goals of getting down carbon emissions, or do they see the health of their the workers underground, or the long term economics, or is it really climate change? Is that sort of the a big one they're trying to do their thing, or is is it sort of a combination of sort of a few of those things?
Well, I mean, they're all multiple benefits, but the big push has been carbon. Without that, you know, um, there wouldn't be a lot of movement. I think, but the other thing that's come with it is that the cheap cost of renewables. So you've had a confluence of extreme pressure, mostly from the financial angle, some financiers more than anything, um, you know, um, and the potential differential in the price of product. So the financial pressures to actually convert to low carbon has been the biggest push um, in this change, I think, and then coupled with the fact that the technology's met that. So whenever you have a sort of a big social push and technology or social need and technology advancing, and there's a confluence of that, you'll get rapid change, and that's what's happening. So like energy is really cheap now, but it's intermittent. Um, and that's come together with the social sort of push for low carbon.
Yeah, because there's not the could hear like the the financials are sort of the push coming from that side. They don't want to be funding the dirty operations that trying to push the greener sort of sites. There's still not a carbon price or whatever per se, but I did see in your latest report, I think it was a case study from was it IGO, where they're actually pricing in a price of was it $60 a ton or something, carbon price in their sort of some of their studies going forward. Is that something that a number of members are doing, actually putting that value on those emissions?
Yeah, so most of them will have a sort of a shadow carbon price when they'll do project analysis. I'm not 100% sure about to what extent that actually permeates final decisions. IGO have a different system, which you can see in that. Not a different, they have another system where they'll have an internal allocation of value for low carbon projects. So it's an effective internal market that they've got within IGO on there, which is a different thing. So all of them, as I said, all of them have a price on carbon. They'll run costs on. But I'm not, there's not full transparency about how that makes it in decision making. But IGO have a separate thing where there's actually a pool available of capital that goes to, and with a real traded price.
Consortium members had many trials out in site so far. They, had, wins and losses, and seeing how this technology actually works out in site and see how it works in the real mine site.
Yeah, no, there's a lot, and they're across the board. So even if you come from the mine design aspect, we just had a big simulation challenge. So there's 5 companies, and 2 of them are going to be selected up front to deploy the integrated simulation capability or combined simulation capability. So that's real. On the light and auxiliary vehicles, there's quite a number of trials that have happened, been sharing, both from IT carriers and you know, vehicles for transporting people. There's several. It's about 20 sort of physical equipment trials that are being shared. There's the trials in both from the major OEMs with members on underground equipment, loaders, trucks. That's all happening, and people are sharing results on that. So that's all happening, and a lot of big battery, as I said, the big storage trials coming up, a very big one. But some smaller ones have happened at IGO as well, sharing results on those as well. So they're happening across the board, and each time they happen, there's sort of people are sharing the data, sharing the insight, sharing the issues that are related to a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, yeah. You've noticed there's been like a number of like smaller trialing, an LV or some of the bigger electric gear, feel very shorter term and lower risk sort of trials, and it's good to see those probably step by step getting to sort of bigger scales, like longer term or sort of a larger sort of on-site trial that to sort of build more and more confidence in the project, in the technology going forward. And I suppose that's the way it's starting to head. But it's
I think once certain areas are well known, I mean, as I said, we're setting up a data system across the whole consortium where the trial information will be shared. So that's been an interesting approach because it has encouraged some suppliers to come forward and want to get their equipment, sort of involved in this because miners, like anyone else, will gravitate towards equipment that they know how it performs in practice. And they'll shorten their adoption time if they can see that other people have used it. It's a really important aspect of accelerating this. So the pragmatists will come across and accelerate use more quickly. So the more equipment, the more trials we can get in sharing in this system, the faster things will get accelerated and people learn. And we'll probably be running a lot of analytics across that as well.
I know when I first started looking into mine electrification, I was going, well, there has been a lot happening in Canada in the past. Why can't we do something similar? But I think our mines are quite, they're different. There's a lot more decline haulage and probably set up a bit different. So it's, trying to transfer some of the learnings that have been done elsewhere, but a different way of how we operate our mines, in this part of the world. And have you been learning from some of those where they're operated elsewhere around the world? Some of these technologies.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, as I said, Evolution have sharing a lot of their trials that are happening in their overseas operations with the consortium, actively involved in that, which are, I think, Canadian operations. So that's been really good. So that's happening. We want to do more of that, and I think it's also prompted some. Obviously we have in Australia have these big declines, which is the sort of nub of the issue, but it's also prompting thinking about. I wouldn't be surprised to see a resurgence of focus on fast, cheaper shaft sinking as well, for base metals and precious metals mines. And some companies have had that as on the research agenda, for a long time as being a big breakthrough. How can we quickly get shafts down? So you may see that. So it might go both ways. We might learn from those overseas mines, but then actually think about how we design ours more effectively, which gets into the mine design area and geology. So part of the solution to this may not be. It's obviously not only going to be equipment, but could come back to better exploration or cheaper exploration, so that we can actually design mines to be design infrastructure with a lower risk profile that fits these types of low carbon electric mines better.
Yeah. I suppose it's you know thinking about it holistically and not just doing things how we've always done them, but with electric gear instead of diesel. I suppose it's rethinking the whole system and seeing, if you're going to go electric, then how do we do it better? If shafts the way to go, or whatever different sort of you know methodologies that
No,
might work.
100%, 100%, Brett. I mean, you're really interested in technology and know a lot about it, and you, whenever a new one comes along, I mean, it takes me back, not takes me back, but you just look at the examples of when people first started to think about mechanical flight. I think half the technologies were things that flap their wings, and so whenever these technologies come along, people try and repeat the same processes, but inevitably it's how it changes the process that where the big wins come, and that'll happen here as well. And it won't just be in mine design; it'll be in operations as well. I think electrification could be a great catalyst for, um, you know, in a more rigorous mine to plan, better end-to-end scheduling. All of those things will be forced, by electrification, because it's the energy system will be much more integrated, so it'll have to be optimized, and b, the scheduling will be have to be more precise. So there'll be a big push in both of those areas, which have a lot of collateral benefits for mining. Anyway, they've been almost the holy grail. End-to-end optimization and mine to plan have been stuff we've been really pushing for decades. But electrification could change that, and with the advent of lots more data and the ability to optimize systems using AI increasingly, which is not really here yet, but it'll come within the next decade, on scale, en masse. So yeah, both operations and mine design will be impacted positively, I think.
Noticed since I've been following the Electric Mine Consortium that I don't know how many members did you have to start with? Like it was like fairly.
Oh, we had about 5 miners and about 7 vendors, so about 12, and there's about 20 now. Yeah.
And that, because that, like you're saying, that's grown as like what's, that sort of organic, like members going, seeing the value of the Electric Mine Consortium, going, oh, we want to be a part of that. It's, I take it you're not necessarily actively looking, but companies just want to, get on board and share some of the learnings that are coming out.
Yeah, look, the vendors will tend to, we'll get people will come to us and want to get involved on that side of it. The miners, we know a lot, know lots of them, and some of the ones that have joined more recently, and hopefully there'll be a couple more join, in the next month or two. They've been companies that we've known and talked to when we were setting this up. That have said, no, look, this is doing really well. We're well positioned now, and there's been more pressure come on them in terms of the carbon drive. So it's been a chicken and egg too. So this EMC's done, become more effective, and the time's right, so they'll come along. But yeah,
there's definitely they can see what the work you guys are doing, but also the environment, the social environment is sort of pushing for those sorts of changes. So like, any half progressive mining company or OEM should be like, seeing the writing on the wall that it's the way it needs to be going.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go back too far, 2017, 18, and there was very little action in this area, even in renewables. Even though it was quite cheap at that time. I mean, there was obviously a lot of action going on with some of the suppliers and OEMs, but in terms of mining companies taking big strides, there wasn't much going on, and that's changed rapidly. So even in the last 8 months, we've seen the targets changed phenomenally for some of the members, and I think that ratcheting up will continue. Like it won't stop at say 30% by 2030. I think we'll find there'll be lots of change in the target setting over the next 5 years.
So they're like mining companies are sort of getting more and more, at least your members getting more and more aggressive on the cuts they want to make to their emissions.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that that's great to see. And I am curious about what you see the future of the Electric Mine Consortium. It's sort of sort of deliver the sort of projects you've got on the cards and try and get that. And I suppose it's a long term sort of project, but it's really facilitating the broader transition to the electric mine?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. I mean, when um, we've run consortium before, like, uh, um, but not lots of them because they're really hard to get up. So I was surprised I saw the need, but I was surprised on the upside. Um, I guess our first aim is to deliver these main objectives, and the members keep reminding us that those 6 streams are really key. Let's just get them done,
Yeah.
and that's a journey. So that's the first priority. I think I don't really want to be too constrained about how this. We want to be very flexible because the power of this consortium is we've got these really good companies working together. They're well facilitated, so that has a power in itself. So I don't want to be overly constrained of thinking, but I think this will evolve more in terms of challenges as those ones get close to being solved. There's a few more that will pop up as part of the zero carbon journey. So I think that'll gradually pop up, and maybe some to do with processing, some more to do with operations. I think once these big things are solved, there's going to be a lot of operational collaboration about how things work across the value chain. So great.
Even you mentioned there's sort of the processing, like the different areas within the mine where the high carbon sort of areas, like processing one of the big areas, and I suppose this is really the focus of the consortium has been around the mining gear, really, like getting the haulage fleet and although the diesel equipment underground, but I suppose you sort of not really looked at that above ground sort of side of things, the beyond the
No,
mine.
no. So I mean, yeah, because I was saying operations. That'll be a whole new bunch of challenges once this stuff's integrated and how you operate and optimize the mines, and then extend it into the value chain. So processing from decarbonisation perspective, but also as part of the system, and flexibility and how it relates to because flexibility in processing is a form of storage of energy anyway. So I mean, I'd like to see maybe our next one where at some point you're really valuing extra capital for flexibility in processing as a battery effectively. It's the same thing. So you could benchmark that and work on that. And but then there's a bunch of other areas like the carbon measurement, carbon trading. When you get to the back end of if something's an islanded, fully renewable mine, there's a lot of complexity about the last 15%. We're just finding out about. Will need addressing. There'll be even potentially carbon farming, carbon sequestration at the back end of this. The companies could work together. So you can see the zero carbon push and operations will throw up new challenges, but there's no point looking at those while you can't store or you can't use electric equipment. So another way. But the other thing we're looking at, Brett, is what infrastructure has EMC got that maybe purposeful for collaboration and the industry anyway, sort of beyond the MC or as part of the MC. So that's the data platform. We're looking at open simulation, and the carbon stuff. There's other things that are useful infrastructure pieces collaboratively, particularly for these sorts of mining companies. So we'll look at that as well.
Yeah, no, you've definitely got to focus on the big, hairy challenges before you can start looking at all the other smaller details or the nuances. The broader decarbonisation of the mining industry. Beyond your members, do you think there's an appetite? There's quite a I know it would vary depending on mining companies, but there's quite an appetite for the push to to net zero or decarbonising a lot of these mining operations. And how fast do you think the mining industry can really get to sort of a net zero? Or it's one of those questions, I suppose it's not easy to answer, but it's sort of curious your thoughts.
Well, I think it's one of those things. Good question, but you often put yourself in different points in time and realise how you can have an executive today and you'll sort of gauge their appetite, but if they're in a social environment or business environment in 5 years or 10 years time or 5 or 10 years ago, they'll behave. It'll be a very different climate. So um, I think a lot of this comes back to uh, the imperative for change around climate. I mean, so any objective observation, I think we're on target now. We're actually have locked in 1.6, 1.7 degrees increase, which is why we're, there's heat waves in the, in Perth, and the deluges on the east coast. So, and the trajectory is likely to be about 2.6 degrees. The practical projections. So you're going to get some enormous pressures coming and potentially black swan events. So you can imagine a situation where this is just going to keep increasing this pressure on the executives and the mining companies. So that'll come. I think the other thing is if we're not pushing this, we'll struggle with people to come into the industry. And it's interesting. I do a lot of, we do quite a bit of business in the US with tech companies and some of our startups and things. And they look at the mining industry, interestingly, as though it's, it was 5 years ago, they were pretty down on it, a lot of these areas, because it was so connected with fossil fuels, and they would just see it as that. Now they see that all the new minerals and see mining as being part of the future. So I think mining has a great opportunity to sort of really flip this perception from being, something that was, has been seen as being on the wrong end of the social sort of ledger to, a leader, and look, frankly, I look at some of the companies involved in the consortium, putting out a 95% renewable industrial complex that's run with, solar, wind, large gravity energy storage and electric trucks and, lots of, technical capability and visualization and remote operations. They'll be very attractive, advanced, clean industrial complexes, which whereas, which are quite leading. So we have that chance to actually really flip the whole image of resources, particularly in the base and precious metals areas. So, don't underestimate the ramping up of pressure. Big opportunity to sort of recreate mining, and look, skills as well. Pulling people into the industry, we've got a real issue with that. So that's important. Willingness, well, people respond to, the system sits where it sits unless there's something to move it, and that's generally external pressure. That's not just the mining industry; it's humans, every industry, So,
hopefully we can use this as a lever to, switch the perception of the mining industry being, dirty to being, a green industry that can sort of lead the way, sort of out of sort of the hole we sort of dug ourselves, so to speak, and I think it's because a lot of people don't really know outside of mining industry. They don't really know about the mining industry. So hopefully, if you flip this sort of the way we've been heading, within the industry, then like you said, turn it to a more a positive perception out in the broader community.
No, quite. Look, it's such a cool. I mean, I started off life in civil construction, multi-story buildings, and then naval architecture and submarines, and I sort of came across the mining industry and with not many expectations, but I thought, this is great. The broad range of technology, the interaction with the community, the uncertainty of geology, the entrepreneurship, the big capital. It was complex and difficult. There's not many industries. I can't think of many other industries where you have that range of complexity. And in fact, even from the high tech area like robotics and AI and stuff, it really stretches the boundaries. It's like, a bit like space, really, in a way, in defence. And so it should be extremely attractive for a whole range of people to want to be part of. I think we should think like that. And as I said, it's a time where it's getting a lot of scrutiny from interest from the tech and the supply chain side. So it's positive scrutiny. So, we should, and a lot of people are stepping up. You see a lot of these new companies are just really doing a great job. I mean, Blackstone, one of the members, has just released a PFS with a fully electric mine. And a lot of the challenges that people thought would be a long way off, they've really grabbed hold of those, and you know, and done a great job. Quite brave, really good.
Well, I was going to say there wouldn't be too many, mining companies putting out, PFSs or studies based on a, completely, electric mine, and it is quite, it's quite brave, and the mining industry is quite, it's a risky sort of industry. Talking about large amounts of capital and a lot of uncertainty with the operation. So it's definitely takes a it's quite a brave step, but it's it's a sort of steps we need to be seeing more of. So it's
That's why things like the consortium are quite important. I mean, if we look at some of the state of play research about where people are prepared to take risks in mining, if you list 12 things out, ore body and asset design are number 11 and 12 on the list. So every time, and it's for the reason you said, you're taking so many other risks around to the time frame and markets and and so on, that you don't want those to be challenged. And of course, when you've got trying to design a transformational thing like moving to zero carbon electrification and so on, that's exactly where you need to take some risks. So we need to work out how do we mitigate them, and hence working together is a really good way of mitigation, collaboration, spreading the trials. But that's where a lot of the simulation stuff comes in as well. And it's also because, you can actually assess the risk ahead of time. But that's the role of sort of the smaller companies as well. They're always the ones that'll, try and work out, or the more entrepreneurial companies, they'll work out how they can lay off the risk and then do well out of managing that effectively. Whereas people with bigger assets are more inclined not to, or it's harder for them to lay it off. So, but yeah, that's what makes this pretty interesting.
It is good to see the smaller and the mid-size, thinking differently about these challenges rather than like being stuck in how things have done. And because if you try and do it how it's always been done, you probably electrify you'll never take that step forward. So it's great to see. But that's pretty well all the questions I had for you today. So I don't know if you had anything else that you think's worth adding from your side.
No, I don't think that's pretty comprehensive, Brett. I think the last comments are made about the imperative for change with respect to climate and how that's coming as, and as I said, I'm not taking an activist principle on that. I was just observing where things are at. And I think to any sort of executives out there, I'd say this is probably going to ramp up, and the ability to measure different assets in terms of carbon per ounce or pound or ton will become very scrutinised, within the next decade. So sort of high-level aggregated portfolio approaches to carbon will come under pressure. You'll probably be measured more on direct output, and that'll come faster than we think. And that'll force change. So I'd have plenty of plans for acceleration up my sleeve as well. If I was managing any of these businesses.
Yeah, definitely. A sort of looks like it'll be a competitive advantage if you have the lowest, emissions per, ton of copper or whatever it is. Then going forward in the future, then it'll look a lot healthier than a dirtier mine.
Yeah, no, quite.
But well, thanks for joining me today, Graham, and much appreciated. And hopefully everything continues to go well with Electric Mine Consortium and have a few wins up on those trials up on site, and we can see more mines becoming electric in the near future.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for chatting to us, Brett. Appreciate that. Enjoyed the conversation, and good luck with your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham. Back again, Brett Dunstone from Mining Green. Just want to say thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Mining Green. Don't forget to subscribe down below if you want to keep up to date with our latest episode as we put them out there. Leave any feedback you might have in the comment section below. And if you know anyone that might be interested in listening to our interviews and the like, please feel free to share as widely as you can. Lastly, Mining Green is brought to you by Inspirit Consulting. Inspirit Consulting is an independent mining consultant run by yours truly. Our strength is in strategic mine planning, but we are passionate about innovative and new technology for the mining industry, decarbonisation of mining, and all the topics that we cover on Mining Green. Please get in touch if there's any way we can help you with new innovative technology on your mine site. Details of getting in touch are down below. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, catch you then.